Welcome back to Hollow Street, where the ordinary is just a thin veil over the truly strange. Tonight's story is one that still gets whispered about in the older parts of town. A tale of time, memory, and a man named Arthur Penwright. Arthur was a fixture on Elm and Maple Street. For 30 years, he was their mailman. Not just a carrier of letters, but a part of the daily rhythm of the neighborhood. He knew who was expecting a college acceptance letter, who was waiting on a postcard from a grandchild, and he always had a pocketful of treats for the neighborhood dogs. He was reliable as the sunrise. Until he wasn't. It was a crisp Tuesday morning in October, 12 years ago. Arthur loaded his bag, tipped his hat to Mrs. Gable watering her petunias, and started his route. He turned the corner onto Maple Street and vanished. He didn't come home that night. His mailbag, half full, was found sitting neatly beside a park bench the next day. But of Arthur, there was no trace. The police investigated, of course. Neighbors were questioned, search parties combed the woods bordering the town. But it was as if Arthur Penwright had simply stepped out of existence. Life, as it does, moved on. A new mail carrier took over the route. Children who once waited for Arthur to give them a shiny stamp grew up and moved away. New families moved in. The memory of the kind, disappearing mailman faded into local legend, a curious footnote in the history of Hollow Street. Then came last Tuesday, a day just like any other, until it wasn't. It was exactly 12 years to the day since Arthur had disappeared. A young man named Leo was checking his front door camera. He was expecting a package and was getting impatient. As he scrolled through the timeline, he froze. There on his porch was an old man in a vintage postal uniform, looking confused. He placed a letter in the mailbox, squinted at the house number, shook his head, and then walked off, looking at his watch. Leo didn't recognize him. He posted the image to the town's community social media page. Anyone know this mailman? He just dropped this off, but it's addressed to someone who lived here over a decade ago. The comments started trickling in. First, confusion, then shock. One by one, older residents chimed in. That looks like Arthur Penwright. It can't be. He disappeared years ago. The old letter was for a Mrs. Eleanor Vance. The postmark was dated 12 years prior. It was a simple birthday card from her sister. Mrs. Vance had passed away 3 years ago. The community was buzzing. Was it a prank? A cruel hoax? But the man in the video, he looked exactly like Arthur, just as they remembered him. He hadn't aged a day. That afternoon, Officer Miller, who was just a rookie when Arthur first went missing, got the call. An elderly man in a postman's uniform was causing a disturbance down on Maple Street. He was trying to deliver mail to houses that no longer existed, arguing with residents he didn't recognize. Miller drove down, his heart pounding with a strange mix of disbelief and anticipation. He found him standing in front of what was now a sleek, modern duplex. But Arthur wasn't seeing a duplex. He was seeing the old Hemlock house, the one that had been torn down 8 years ago. I don't understand, the old mailman said, his voice trembling slightly. The Hemlocks are waiting on this parcel. I just saw Mr. Hemlock this morning. He told me it was urgent. Officer Miller approached cautiously. Sir, my name is Officer Miller. Can I help you? The man turned, his eyes wide and bewildered. Arthur Penwright, he said, extending a hand. Just finishing up my route. Bit of a strange day, though. Everything looks different. Did they repaint all the houses overnight? It's all very confusing. I feel like I've only been gone for a few hours. Arthur, Miller said gently. You've been gone for 12 years. The color drained from Arthur's face. 12 years? That's impossible. That's absurd. I just had my morning coffee with my wife, Martha, not 3 hours ago. I need to get home to her. She'd be worried. The words hung in the air, heavy and heartbreaking. Martha Penwright had waited for her husband for 5 years before she finally sold their house and moved to a retirement community in another state to be closer to her daughter. She had passed away 2 years ago. Arthur was brought to the station. He was medically cleared, physically fit, and showed no signs of dementia or mental illness. He was just lost in time. For him, it was still that crisp October morning. He could describe the headlines in that day's newspaper, the chill in the air, the conversation he'd had with Mrs. Gable about her prize-winning roses. His memory of the last 3 hours as he perceived them was crystal clear. But the 12 years in between? It was a complete blank. A void. He kept looking at his watch, a simple, old-fashioned analog timepiece. It was still ticking. The date, however, was stubbornly stuck on that October day from 12 years ago. He'd tap it, shake his wrist, but it refused to acknowledge the passage of time. Much like its owner, the experts had no answers. Psychologists, doctors, even a few fringe physicists brought in by curious journalists, all left scratching their heads. Where had Arthur been? Some whispered he'd stumbled into a time slip, a fold in the fabric of reality that spat him back out, unchanged, a decade later. Others suggested an abduction of the most unusual kind. For Arthur, the world had become a nightmare. The reflection in the mirror was his own, but the world around it was alien. The friends he asked for were gone. The shops he remembered were replaced by ones he'd never seen. The children he knew were now adults with children of their own, strangers who looked at him with a mixture of pity and fear. He was a ghost in his own life, a man out of time. He would wander the old route, a phantom in his postal uniform, which the department let him keep. He'd trace the familiar paths, but the landmarks were all wrong. He'd stop and stare at a giant oak tree, remembering it as a sapling he'd watched the millers plant. Now it towered over him, a testament to the years he couldn't account for. The story of the returning mailman became a permanent part of Hollow Street's lore. He became a living paradox, a man whose past was more real to him than his present. Sometimes late at night, residents would see him standing on the corner of Elm and Maple, right where he first vanished, staring at his watch as if willing it to rewind, to take him back to that moment before he stepped out of his world and into ours, 12 years too late. He wasn't looking for a way forward. He was just looking for the way back home, to a time that only existed in his memory, to a morning that never ended. And that's the unsettling truth of Hollow Street. Sometimes the mail gets delivered, but it doesn't always arrive on time. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to lock your doors, check your mail, and don't forget to subscribe for more tailies from the corners of our strange little town. We'll see you next time on Hollow Street.